What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's transfer tips ahead of game week 37. Of course, the penultimate game week of the season. We're going to look at popular players that are being transferred in and out of FPL teams and talk about whether managers are making a poor decision or a good decision. We're going to start off with the headline player, which is Mohamed Salah, who if you captain him in game week 36, you're probably a little bit frustrated, right? He gets the blank in the first game against Spurs, and in the second game, he's not even starting against Aston Villa, and obviously comes on for a cameo, gets no points whatsoever. Now, he's only been transferred out so far by 30,000 managers, but I think people are genuinely looking to move him on. And to be fair, if you think there's a genuine risk of him not starting Southampton, there's only 2 game weeks left. There's only 2 game weeks to get points. That's a lot of budget sat on your bench. I can see why people are looking at doing it. The only real question is, does he start or not, right? Which is pretty difficult to answer. I was kind of shocked, to be honest, to hear that he wasn't going to start against Aston Villa when he'd just been rested against Newcastle. You say, fair enough, right? Around Champions League, maybe you want to give him a little bit of time off. He's played a lot of minutes this season. Obviously, he had African Cup of Nations as well. But to miss 2 of the last 3 league games, I don't think we really expect that from Liverpool, especially when the league is still on. Right? I think we all thought that, okay, the league's on, Liverpool aren't going to rest players, Man City aren't going to rest players, but Klopp is resting players because obviously he's got other trophies to try and win, the FA Cup final and the Champions League final. So the short answer is, I don't know if he's going to start against Southampton or not. My money would probably be on him starting, in which case I'd rather keep him, and he probably will be on my free hit, but there has to be doubts there now. There has to be more doubts than there was before. Now, we can try and look at the fixture schedule to try and think or try and get into Klopp's head about why he may have rested him. And let's be honest, they still won. So Klopp, in the end, did the right thing. He's given his star player a bit of time off ahead of an FA Cup final, and they still won the game without him. I think he might have been on the pitch when the second goal went in, but obviously it wasn't him that scored it, right? It was Diaz to Mane. I can't remember who Salah came on for. Maybe it was Diaz, but whatever, right? It doesn't matter now. The other thing as well that kind of crossed my mind is they don't really have a natural backup to Salah. Like, Diaz can play there. I guess Mane could play there if they really wanted him to. I don't see that happening much. And Jota's played on the right as well. But all of those players are better in other positions. Like, Diaz and Jota can play on the left instead of Mane if they need to. Mane, Jota or Firmino can play down the middle. But none of them are quite as good as Salah on the right. And I guess that makes sense because he's like one of the best players in the world. But Klopp is obviously happy to bench him. Now, looking at these fixtures, so the Villa game was yesterday, so that was the 10th of May, right? So that was only 3 days after the Spurs game. So maybe it was the quick turnaround, and obviously they do have an FA Cup final, so that probably is playing into the thoughts. It is then another quick turnaround, right? It's Saturday to Tuesday, which is actually slightly less time than Villa to the FA Cup final. So obviously we've not seen that result yet. We will see the result of that game. We will see any injuries. We will see who lined up, who played what minutes before the deadline, because this week's deadline's on Sunday. If Salah goes and plays 120 minutes in that game, let's say it goes to extra time, I would be slightly worried about him playing against Southampton. He could get rested again. I don't think there's much chance of him missing out on the Wolves game, because that is 5 days after the Southampton game, and it's also 6 days before the Champions League final. I know people will be thinking, okay, you rest him ahead of the final to not pick up any injuries, and we might get early team news that week, and maybe that will happen, but 6 days is more than enough time for a player like Salah to recover and be ready. And we got to remember, managers often talk about rhythm, right? You don't want to just rest players for long periods of time. They need to play in matches. So I do think whatever happens, this would be famous last words now, he probably plays that Wolves game. Last game at home of the season, 6 days before the final. You get a win, good morale booster, whether the league's gone or not. Happy days. If the league is gone by that point, possibly there's some rest, but I just don't see it. I think he'll play because of the time until the final. But that Southampton game, I think, is a real worry if he plays like 120 minutes. So it's really difficult for me to sit here. Like, it would be easy to say, to be honest, he's blanked a lot recently. He's missed 2 of the last 3 games. Of course, you sell him. But it's difficult for me to say that, because if he starts against Southampton, that's a real good fixture. The counter argument would be, if people are going to someone like Son, Well, Burnley at home is probably just as good. Son's going to play 80 to 90 minutes, right? He's pretty much nailed on to start as well. He's in great form. And then on the last day of the season, again, he's guaranteed to play, you would think. Even if top four's gone for Spurs, Kane and Son will start that last game of the season. I'd be shocked if they don't. And it's Norwich. That could be 4, 5, 6 goals for Spurs because I think he's chasing Golden Boot. Kane just likes scoring goals for fun. They're both going to be absolutely on it. I guess it's it'd be a bit different if it was at home. Maybe that would be even less of a shock for them to be rotated. But even going away, I think they will play as normal. So I don't know. The short answer is I don't really like selling him if you think he's going to play Southampton. If you genuinely think it's a doubt, if he plays 120 minutes in the FA Cup final or something like that, I think because there's only 2 game weeks left, because he's such a big budget player, maybe you can sell him. But I will be doing everything I can do to keep him if I think he's going to play. Zaha, very popular this week. Nearly 58,000 transfers in already. He's actually, at the time recording, the most popular transfer in for midfielders so far ahead of game week 37. Now, I've not activated the chip yet, but I'm probably going to free hit this week, and he will definitely be in my team if I do. And I am probably going to have a Villa and an Everton defender, but I am a little bit worried about whether or not they'll concede in this game. So I do think overall Zaha is a really good option. Let's forget about the free hit for a second and talk more about people that are transferring him into their teams ahead of obviously a double against Villa and Everton, and then the game against Man United at home last day of the season. Ultimately, I think he's a really good option, right? I was a little bit shocked when I put these numbers together because these are non-penalty numbers. Like his open play goal threat is 0.13 XG per 90, which is really low, right? To give you an example of some players that have got a little bit higher than that, Marcus Alonso, Reguilon, Joe Linton, Dan James. And that's not to say that Zaha's a bad option, but open play goal threat is quite low. And that's like a little bit of a contrast to the eye test. Like when you watch him, it always feels like he's involved. It always feels like he's causing trouble to the opposition. But in terms of high quality chances in front of goal, it just doesn't happen that often. But obviously, there's caveats to that. One, some of those players I've listed don't always play. The fact that Zaha plays to 90 minutes pretty much every game is a huge plus. And he does have penalties. We shouldn't overlook that at all. He's had 7 penalties this year. It's like Milivojevic all over again. He's missed 2, scored 5. He is their first choice by the looks of it, penalty taker. So overall, I think he's a really good option. When I saw those numbers for non-penalty XG, I was a little bit shocked. But I think 4.5 points per game, if you could do that against Villa and Everton and come away with around 9 points, I'd be pretty happy with that, especially if you can get up to kind of 10 plus. And then, for those of you that obviously aren't free hitting, that have to keep them in your team, I don't think Man United at home, like for some players, like Aston Villa players, for example, I'm a little bit wary about bringing too many in because you've got that Man City game last day of the season. But Man United at home, this might be one of the best times ever to play them. Palace are going to keep obviously playing against Villa and Everton. I don't think they're going to give up. Like, obviously they're safe now and they're not really going to get into Europe or anything like that. But it's Vieira's first season. I don't think he's going to let up at all. They're going to keep rhythm going into their final home game of the season. Man United, on the other hand, don't have a game this week, and obviously then have to travel to play Crystal Palace. They don't care. They're not showing any fight right now. Brighton, look, were really good. Like I don't want to take away from Brighton playing really well, but Man United were really bad as well. Like every single ball that was there to be won between a Brighton player and a Man United player, it just felt like Brighton won every time. Is that going to be any different against Crystal Palace? I don't think it's going to be. Like Man United's season's just done. They're just waiting for it to end. What about Crystal Palace just getting that final game of the season at home? What better way to finish off than give your fans a win against Man United? They're going to be right up for it. And obviously Zaha went to Man United at one point as well. So overall, really good option. Double game week. Decent enough fixtures. Man United at home, it's got to be one of the best times in the last 20 years to play Man United right now. Yes, his open play goal threat isn't that great, but he always plays 90 minutes and he will be a bit of a menace to defenders, and he's got penalties. Maybe he'll get his 8th, 9th, 10th penalty of the season over these next couple of weeks. So there's been somewhat of a mass exodus of Mason Mount from FPL Managers teams. He's been transferred out by nearly 45,000 people already, ahead of 2 pretty good fixtures, right? Back-to-back, Leicester at home, Watford at home. But I guess people, a bit like Mo Salah, are worried about minutes now that he's missed that kind of Wolves game. Now, again, before the deadline, we are going to see the Chelsea lineup and minutes for the Leeds game, the Chelsea lineup and minutes for the FA Cup final as well, which could play into our thinking ahead of that Leicester at home game. But really, you need him to start both, because there are obviously double game week options that you could go for instead. There could even be downgrades, right? You could even go to someone like Gordon, save a chunk of money, and put that into defence, a different midfielder, or possibly up front, depending on what your team structure is. So the short answer is I don't think people are making a mistake necessarily by selling Mason Mount, but there is a chance, because like Salah, especially early on in the season, he doesn't miss many games. It's very rare for him to kind of miss out completely for Chelsea, and the fact that he's just missed Wolves, I wouldn't be completely surprised to see him now start every single game for the rest of the season for Chelsea. One thing to keep in mind is top 4 could soon be done for them, right? It could even be done before the Game Week 37 deadline, and that might mean that Tuchel messes around with the lineup a little bit, especially with 2 back-to-back home games, right? You could give players a send-off even in the Leicester game, and then play your kind of first choice 11 or whatever in the Watford at home game, right? Sorry, in the Watford game, the last day of the season. So that is worth bearing in mind, that top 4 could be done soon. Now, I don't think Tuchel's going to want to lose third position, right? I think if Arsenal overtook them like that, it's not that that would make it a bad season or anything, but I just don't think it would be a great look, and I just don't think it's something he would want. So that is something to also keep in mind. If we have a quick look at the fixtures, so he's missed the Wolves game, and obviously they've got Leeds today, which is the 11th of May. They've actually got 1 day less to rest before the final than Liverpool do, right? So that's actually a little bit of a disadvantage. There is 5 days then till the Leicester game. So that's quite a bit of rest. So I think it would be surprising. Again, maybe if some of the players like Mason Mount play 120 minutes in the final, it could mean that they get less... they get more of a rest in the next game. But 5 days, I think, is probably okay. The more interesting thing is the Leicester to Watford game is only 3 days. So there has to be some doubt about those players playing in both of those games. Again, not saying it's 100% likely, but it could happen. Now, last day of the season is always a time when we might get early team news, so we might get some of the Chelsea leak news just like we might for other teams. And if he plays that game, it's a brilliant fixture. Watford are down and out. There's press conference news from Watford. There's so many first-team players that are either injured or ill. I mean, I'm a little bit sceptical about whether they're being saved in case they need to be sold ahead of relegation, but whatever. So if Everton do really well against them, I dread to think what kind of Leicester could do in Game Week 37 or Chelsea could do in Game Week 38. So that's worth bearing in mind. But like I said, the short answer is, if you want to sell him because you're worried about minutes, especially if he gets a lot of game time against Leeds and Liverpool, I think it's fair game, especially with a double game week to work around as well. So I want to talk about Danny Ings. I feel like his transfers in might pick up a little bit of pace ahead of the deadline, especially if Ollie Watkins is out. Now, he did go off with what looked like an injury during the Liverpool game. He definitely, at least from what I saw, he had a limp when he walked off. Now, that could just be an impact thing, and he might be fully available for the next few fixtures. But if he's not, that would pretty much secure, famous last words, but it would pretty much secure Danny Ings' place in the team. You could argue that Ollie Watkins being out is a detrimental effect to Villa. He does a lot of pressing from the front. Maybe they wouldn't win the ball back so much, get so many chances to attack, etc. But I think ultimately, ahead of 2 good home games, Palace at home, Burnley at home, if Ings was nailed, he would then suddenly become a lot better of an option. Now, I'm not saying he won't start anyway, because he has been starting with Watkins up front and obviously having Coutinho or Buendia behind. But I do think because he hasn't played a huge amount this season, you're always going to have slight doubts in your mind about how secure he is. Would one bad game make Gerrard rethink? And when Watkins is fit, he's going to play. I don't think we can quite say the same for Danny Ings. But it might be worth the risk, because when he's on the pitch, he should be on penalties as well. So as a general rule, I quite like this transfer in. I like it more if Watkins is out, but I don't hate it if he's fit. The only thing, again, coming back to all Aston Villa players right now, is Man City away last day of the season. If you had to play Danny Ings or Watkins or Coutinho or whoever, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but ideally you would have someone else on your bench that can come in, or you'd have a transfer to sell him to someone else. I know a lot of people are going to look at Tony last day of the season against Leeds, stuff like that. Could be Jesus if you've got a bit of money spare. Whoever it is, just keep in mind that plan for the last day of the season. But ultimately, the reason I kind of stuck him in the video was, I watched that Liverpool game. I tweeted, it was a bit of a jokey tweet, but I tweeted that he looked proper lively. I just think he got into some good positions. He did have some good chances, and I think you're either like me and you think, right, it's good that he's getting chances, or you're someone that, okay, it's really frustrating these missing chances and therefore he's no good. I do think Alisson, is just a top quality keeper. So the fact that he kind of maybe puts people off a little bit more in 1v1s plays a part. You're not necessarily going to get that against Palace and Burnley so much, but I just thought he looked decent at a time when he's getting a run in the team and he's on penalties, which is good for FPL managers, as we discussed with Zaha as well. I think he looks like a pretty good option in. It's just those slight doubts to use a transfer on him, to then maybe have to transfer him back out in game week 38. If you don't think his minutes are secure, if Watkins is fully fit, that might put me off just a little bit. So there we go, that is it for that one. Give it a like if you enjoyed it and hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you think about the players that I've spoken about. Who are your transfers out and in this week? Are we really going to sell Mo Salah? Are people genuinely going to do that this week? And if so, for who? Is it just for Son? Is it for someone else? Do you think he's going to play against Southampton? Do you think he's not? Let me know below what you think. I will leave it there. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again then.